Hello, my name is Nathan Owen, and I'm from Team 1. So today we are going to go through our product backlog that we have. This has our story points that we set during our planning poker. So today I'm just going to go through each user story and kind of just give the reasoning that we had for assigning the values. This was really the result of really what we did in our planning. So the first one is, as a user, I want to be able to create a change request so that I can document my changes on systems. So we assigned this value a 3. Now, the story points that we went with, we did this based off of complexity. So the higher the number is more complex. And really, we did the scale of 1, 2, 3, 5, and 10. We felt like anything higher than that was just getting a bit ridiculous. So we kept it to those numbers. So we set it a 3, and really the thought process was, so this is just going to be a basic form to capture the user data. Then we just need to sanitize it a bit for the database, and then we just put that in the database. It wasn't really all too complex. So the next part, as a manager, I want to be able to view log tickets so I can know what to review. So we did a 1 on this one because this is really the simplest task, because we're simply pulling all the requests that we have in our database that are marked open and displaying them in a basic table. Not too complex at all. So after that, we have, as a manager, I want to be able to approve or deny tickets so that users know whether they can make the change they requested. And so this one's a 2. It's less complex than creating a change request, because really we just need to send the request ID and the approver ID. That's really all we need to know. And then we simply just update that change request with the approver ID and then changing the request to approved. So it's not a full out form. There's no free form data. It's pretty much just sending 2 IDs. So not that complex, honestly. So then the next one, this really is we kind of felt like this was the most difficult part of this project. So as a manager, I want to be able to add comments to change requests so that I can log my thoughts or get additional information from the user logging the requests. So like I said, this is the most complex part of this project, so we assigned it a 10. And really, comments have to be stored in their own table in the database and be referenced to the change request. So we have to keep track of who wrote the comment, when they did it, as well as really know what they wrote. Then we have to display all this information back in an orderly fashion so that the conversation makes sense. We can't just arbitrarily store comments and display them however we want. There has to be an order to it. And so keeping all of this relation and everything, obviously once it's set up, it's fine, but there is some planning that has to go behind it and different references. So we felt this was the most complex and would need the most amount of time to be worked on. So the next one, as a user, I want to be able to enter a specific date range and generate a report of change requests so that I can give that information to auditors. On this one, we assigned it a 5. And honestly, we did this because the idea of this is a report used for audit. And so typically when you generate reports for auditors, they are sticklers for certain information formatting. So this is one that kind of needs to have some extra thought put into it, a little bit extra love on that, just so we can make sure we get the right info the first time to satisfy that audit requirement, because that's really the main point of having a change management system, is to satisfy audit. So this will require proper formatting instead of just displaying data. Obviously, as an IT person, just seeing the data, that's good enough for us. We can see it. But an auditor, they probably want something a little bit nicer. All right. So moving on, as a user, I want to be able to search previously logged change requests so that I can see what changes have been made in the past. So this is a tiny bit more complex than displaying everything, primarily just because there is freeform data that's being sent. So that's why we assigned this a 2. It's not a full-blown form because we're not really having to add anything. Really, we just we just have to search the database. So we signed it a 2 because there's just a little bit of data, but it's not so complex where we wanted to put that up with adding things to the database. So that's why we gave it a 2. So moving on, as a user, I want to be able to log time spent on a change request so that I can perform a cost analysis on the work done. So this one, we went ahead and gave a 3. Really the thought behind this was we have to keep track of each time change is logged, like work is logged. So we have to log all of that, and as well as calculate the total amount of time. And then we have to put this with the change request. So it's kind of like there's more tables involved, and then we have to keep track of each time, do some math, and we're entering data in. So we went ahead and gave this one a 3. It's not super complex, but it is going to require a little bit more effort. So then the next one. As a user, I want to be able to update the contents of my change request so that I can add or change any additional information that may be needed. So essentially, we're just updating the information. That seems simple. Obviously, as you can see here, we marked it a 5. We feel like it'll be a little bit more complex, primarily because this requires pulling the data for the request from the database and then allowing the user to change that data. Obviously, things like the change ID, that can't be changed, and like the change title, but really all the other information can be changed. So then we have to allow the user to do that, and then we have to sanitize everything, make sure they didn't add anything that we don't want, and then put that back into the database and update everything. So really we put this as a 5 because not only are we're having to pull data, edit it, sanitize it, and update it. So there's multiple processes in there, and if it's not done right, you can accidentally delete information or not actually update it. So this requires a little bit more effort. So that's why we gave it a 5. All right. And as an administrator, I want to be able to add new users to the site so they can use the change management system. Obviously, as IT department grows, you're going to have to add users. So that's a key part in this project. We gave it a 3, kind of going off of the same logic, really, of why we gave the change request a 3. It's a basic form, and you just have to enter the user data, sanitize it, and send it back to the database. Obviously, creating the form and creating things like that, the table, I mean, there are components to it, not ridiculously complex, but it is above average. And then the final one, obviously, if you're going to have to add users, you're going to also want to delete them. So that's why we have this final one. As an administrator, I want to be able to delete a user from the system so that I can ensure only current employees can access the system. We gave that a 2. And really is kind of going off the same logic of approving and denying tickets. It's a fairly simple process. We're just kind of passing around IDs. So deleting users is obviously far easier than adding a user, since all that we need is the user ID. We simply send the user ID in a SQL query, delete it, and then pretty much we're done. It's not as simple as just pulling data, because we are deleting it, and we are having to send some data back. So these were all the stories that we could really think of. We feel like these story points are really accurate, and that the complexity is true. And so we feel like we feel really good with these values and feel like that we'll be able to accomplish this task. So thank you for watching this, and we'll see you next time.